Welcome and good day, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Lindo Manjodi, more affectionately known as Rosa in these parts of the University of the Western Cape. Welcome to the 2020 Mental Health Day Awareness event. The 10th of October, across the world, across the globe, is World Mental Health Day. The month of October is World Mental Health Awareness Month. And what better time for us as the Center for Student Support Services under the Student Development and Support Unit to host a Mental Health Day. We started our first Mental Health Day event a couple of years ago. It's been a resounding success, and we've decided that COVID-19 will not stop us from continuing to spread the message of hope. We want you to enjoy today's 2 hour of festivities, of edutainment, of fun, of questioning and answering, and also getting to know and being more aware. But importantly, we can't start any event without bringing on our Commander-in-Chief in the University of the Western Cape, the #1 person, the first person you contact when you enter this university, and that is the Rector and Vice Chancellor, Professor Tyrone Pretorius. Prof, could you please bless us and give us permission to move forward?
Mental Health Day is a subject close to my heart because of my background in psychology. But it is even more important to me because I have seen the damage that is caused by the societal stigma that accompanies those who suffer from mental illnesses. Just because you can't see a wound or an injury, it does not mean that those with mental health issues should not be treated with compassion and empathy. In fact, it is just the opposite, because those suffering from depression, anxiety, and other disorders spend so much time suffering alone and feeling ashamed about what others call their weakness. This illness does not discriminate. It affects the young and the old, the rich and the poor, and does not confine itself to a gender. The past months have made things far more difficult for everyone. COVID-19 has brought much hardship to so many people on many levels, including high levels of stress, anxiety, and fear. It's not surprising that the United Nations has said that the impact of the pandemic already has and will continue to have profound mental health consequences. It's for this reason that I ask all of you to join me as a campus community that cares, to pause for a moment on Mental Health Day and think of all those who suffer silently. Set aside time today to make a pact with yourself, to have a duty of care and to show kindness and acceptance. I want to stress that our commitment to an inclusive, empowering campus where no student and staff member feel that they must carry these burdens alone. We have over the years steadily increased the support that we offer, from the Human Resources Employee Wellness Program to the Center for Student Support Services. We are also in the process of putting together a mental health and wellness policy to create an environment where mental health matters. As we continue to find our way through the stressful times brought on the pandemic, I want to urge you to make use of the support services that we have available. And I also want to reassure you that at UWC, every single staff member and student matters, and discrimination and stigmas have no place here. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, now that we've had the Commander-in-Chief at the University of the Western Cape speak and bless this event, we'd like to introduce to you the world-renowned Creative Arts Choir of the University of the Western Cape, who have blessed us and allowed us and given us permission, rather, to use a video that they pre-recorded before lockdown of a song and an item to open this event in all creative expression that we would like from them. And also at the end of that, we've got a video recorded by our very own maestro, Sibusiso Njeza, the choir conductor, giving us a message of hope. So put your hands together in a virtual welcome for the UWC Creative Arts Choir.
There comes a time when we hear a certain call, when the world must come together as one.
There are people dying, and it's time to lend a hand to life, the greatest gift of all.
We can go pretending day by day that someone, somewhere will soon make a change.
We are all a part of God's great big family, and the truth, you know, love is what we need.
We are the world, we are the children, we are the ones to make a brighter day, so let's start giving.
There's a choice making, we're saving our lives. It's true, we'll make a better day, just you and me. Oh, send them your heart, so they know that someone cares, and their lives
will be stronger and free. Oh, as God has shown us by turning stones to bread, and so we must lend a helping hand. We are the world,
we are the world,
we are the children,
we are the children,
we are the ones to make a brighter day, so let's start giving.
There's a choice making, we're saving our lives. It's true, we'll make a better day, just you and me.
When you're down and out, there seems no hope at all. But if we just believe, there's no way we can fall.
Well, let's realize, oh, that a change can only come when we stand together as one.
We are the world, we are the children, we are the ones to make a brighter day, so let's start giving.
There's a choice making, we're saving our lives. It's true, we'll make a better day, just you and me. So yeah, we are the world, we are the children, we are the ones who seek a brighter day, so let's start giving. There's a choice making, we're saving our lives. It's true, we'll make a better day, just you and me. We are the world, we are the children, we are the ones to make a brighter day, so let's start giving. There's a choice making, we're saving our lives. It's true, we'll make a better day, just you and me. So yeah, we are the world, we are the children, we are the children, we are
The UWC Choir hopes this video recorded during the lockdown serves as a message of hope, not only to those suffering from COVID-19, but friends, family, colleagues, and neighbors suffering from mental health difficulties during and beyond these trying times. We may not be together, but we will always be there for you in love and hope.
And now, to get a warm welcome from our very own commander within the Center for Student Support Services, which is housed in the Student Development and Support Unit, from the DVC and Vice Rector, Professor Pamela Dube, who is the DVC SDS and who is our boss and responsible for all my notifications on the 23rd of every month. Welcome, Prof, and please give us a warm welcome.
Good day. As we know, the importance of mental health and general well-being of students in relation to achieving their educational outcomes and success is well established. However, the ramifications of the socio-economic and psychosocial challenges can be very profound, and often they precede the student's entry into university. COVID-19 has indeed exacerbated these challenges and brought about huge changes, and we certainly cannot afford to keep our heads down, hoping that we will bounce back to normal. During this COVID-19 pandemic, there are reports globally of rising student depression, suicidality, and a general sense of loss. And serious mental health issues may go unseen in this phase of online platforms. So, as the university, we are making efforts to step up in our responses to enhance our Level 5 lockdown protocols in March. Among other efforts, toll-free telephonic counseling, including video calling and WhatsApp calling, has continued on a daily basis. And our partners at SADC have continued to provide extra support and their 24-hour services. These resources are of course not enough, and we appreciate the collaborative efforts with the faculties. Student mental health and well-being is our priority. And our current major project, led by CSSS, the development of the UWC Student Mental Health and Wellness Policy, has gained significant momentum and will be completed by December. And I want to acknowledge the institutional-wide participation in the different areas of the development of this policy, including the student voice in the survey that has been conducted, the consultative workshops, and the thematic teams. We look forward to your support too and participation in the implementation process. Again, on this notable day, we want to give you hope. We want to reassure you that you are not alone should you require support. We want to encourage you to familiarize yourself with the services and programs that are made available by the university to support student wellness and success. Knowing when all those who are reaching out to support, to advise, and to refer, and all those whose professional role includes taking time to listen, to counsel, and to walk this very tricky path together. Take very good care of yourselves and of one another. Thank you very much.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're joining us from in the world. My name is Lindo Manjoli, and I'd like to welcome you to the Mental Health Day Awareness Panel discussion hosted by the Center for Student Support Services, along with a number of our stakeholders who will work closely together in order to try and improve the student experience and restore academic functioning at the University of the Western Cape and our external stakeholders, of course. We'd like to thank you for taking this time to join us in what has become an important but rather neglected subject in South African and perhaps global society, the question of mental health. And today, to be able to unlock some of the mysteries and the mythologies, and perhaps to get some more information on a down talking to sort of issue in South African society, We've brought you experts, we've brought you people who work on the ground with people, we've brought you all the sorts of people that can give you information about what mental health is, give you tips on mental health, and how they deal day to day with people who are dealing with mental health struggles, and what are the sort of things that we can do to improve this awareness, and perhaps also to improve how much we know about mental health as well. So today we'll be having a panel discussion, and the panel discussion will be joined by a number of speakers who I'll introduce to you a bit later. But how it will be set up, we'll have two speakers in the first session, and then we'll have 3 speakers in the second session. In between that, we'll have performances, we'll have creative works, we'll have poetry, and other people who are giving us their creative expression in order to increase the question of hope. We want you to keep front and center that today and perhaps every other day after this, we hope that we are giving a message of hope, a message that people can understand that they have got people out there who are there for them and who are there to listen to them, but also primarily to give enough information for us to be in the best possible position to deal and help those who are dealing or struggling with mental health issues. So today, the first speaker is someone coming from an organization that is very close to UWC, perhaps close to many other universities in terms of mental health support, and that is the South African Depression and Anxiety Group, going by the name of Vanisha Gordon. Vanisha Gordon is the operations manager at the South African Depression and Anxiety Group, and she's always had a passion for mental health when she started volunteering at SADC and fell in love with the work that SADC does, as well as what SADC stands for, and she currently oversees all special projects, and particularly important to our context today, she's responsible for the dedicated university support helplines across the country. So welcome, Vanisha, and please tell us, what is it that is mental health, and what is your understanding, and what are the sort of things that you think we can think about today? Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm from SADC, and I think first things first is maybe just to explain who is SADC and what we do. So SADC is the South African Depression and Anxiety Group, and we run the National Suicide Crisis Helpline, and we've been around now for 26 years. We have, in addition to that, have various dedicated projects and directly related to universities specifically. We do run the UWC dedicated helpline, and with that we offer the support to the students with regards to mental health support, coping skills, self-help tips, and how to manage your stress, and how to take the next step, and how to manage it, and how to create that environment or create the perspective that you are okay and you can do better and there is help available. So what is mental health? Mental health is the way you feel, similarly to how if you had a neck pain, you would have a stiff neck, you would be able to go to a physio and you would be able to get it fixed. The same way, if you're not feeling well, if you're not eating well, if you changed, the things that you used to like before and now you're not liking it, if you're just the way your sleeping has changed, your eating has changed, you're not feeling yourself, you're feeling different, and you know that you're not coping. That's where you need to then go and ask for help. Phone a helpline, speak to your doctor, speak to your psychologist, reach out, and that's what it is. Mental health is being okay and being happy and being content and also being able to cope with the little difficulties that come into life. And it's important for us to be aware that if we are struggling, that we need to ask for help, and it's okay to do that. I think there's so much more that goes with it, especially when it comes to university students. I've been dealing with university students for many years now through the dedicated projects. And with university students, what I have noticed is that it's different. It's the stresses that are based on the performance and the awareness that, I'm going to study today and, it's my future. And it's what am I going to do when I'm done studying? How am I going to get past first year? It's also adapting to a new kind of life. School and university are two completely different ball games. And I think it's so important to have that support and have that awareness that you have the support to actually get through it. I mean, many students come from different areas and then they have to come to big cities. They have to live on their own. It's the financial implications that impact you. It's living on your own. It's being able to look after yourself. It's also interacting socially with other students. I mean, if you had your friends back home and now, you know, you're in this new space, you're in this new area, the learning is completely different. The workloads are also completely different when we look at school and university. So there's a lot of different adaptations that university students go through. As well as when, you know that the environment such as pre-COVID, I think jobs were also very difficult. And now, I'm going to say post-COVID, not post-COVID, but within this time, it's also even more difficult because you've had to adapt to studying at university, and now you've had to adapt to studying at home. And I think a lot of university students that didn't sign up for correspondence learning, I found it a little bit more difficult because it's online learning, it's the expectation, it's the discipline, it's not being able to interact one-on-one with a lecturer if you have a question, or with other students that is sitting, like a student sitting next to you if you want to ask a question. I think it's so difficult to manage that and to change it. And I think it's so important for that support structure to be there so that you know as a student that if I'm not coping, if I can't manage, then this is where I can go to ask for help.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Venetia, for that. And I think you guys play a critical role in the University of the Western Cape, and I think other universities as well. I'd like you to just ask you, one more question, because I think you've elaborated quite a lot on key issues. One more question would be, what are sort of the prevalent issues that you think UWC students present with in terms of mental health struggles, particularly given that the context of each university in the Western Cape in particular, or perhaps South Africa as a whole, the context is different. So do those contexts influence the kind of issues that, students present with?
I think it's very, I think pre-COVID, I think different universities definitely had different students experience different, issues and stresses. But I think if we look at now within COVID, I think it's very similar. I mean, it's the adaptation to the online learning. It's the availability of resources. Not all of us are able to go back home and be able to study and have our own space and call that a study space. That also becomes a very big issue. I mean, if a student was at the res and they would have their own room, or they would be sharing a room, but they would have a space, this is my study space. And I think that also creates that mindset that, okay, when I'm sitting here, I'm studying, I'm doing my work, I'm doing my schoolwork. But when you're back home, and now in this COVID time, you're home and you have brothers and sisters, you have expectations, you have responsibilities. And I think that's across the board and across the country. I think that is one of the things that students are struggling with. And the fact that online learning is not the same as a face-to-face lecture. I think it's across the board, especially with the concept of, financial stability, not to mention the fact that some of the students are on bursaries, and then they have to pass, or they have to get certain percentages to then carry on the next year, or to secure bursaries for their future. I don't know if that answers your question.
It answers it perfectly. Thank you so much, Venetia. That was Venetia Gordon from the South African Depression and Anxiety Group, a very close partner of the University of the Western Cape. And we'll be please stream in your questions. Drop us your questions on the comments. Drop us your questions or your messages of hope, given the information that has been shared. And I hope that insightful piece of information that she's given us has given you some more meat on the proverbial bone on the questions of mental health. Thank you so much, Phoenicia. We'll be moving now to our next speaker. Our next speaker is coming from home, speaking from someone who's outside of UWC with a close relationship to UWC, now coming from someone inside UWC who works directly with the students. We'll have our very own Stacey, who is a person who works at the Center for Student Support Services, who is a sessional psychologist at CSSS, and we'll ask Stacey just to give us, more on what are the sort of mental health issues inside UWC, and generally what is mental health and why it is so important from her perspective. But before we allow Stacey to come through, we just want to introduce Stacey to you guys so that you can have a bit of background information. So Stacey Campin is a clinical psychologist. She completed both a psychology degree and a master's degree at the University of the Western Cape, proudly so. And she's employed as a sessional psychologist at the Center for Student Support Services, and also has a part-time private practice where she mainly attends to adolescents and adults, and her areas of interest are in community psychology, substance abuse, trauma, and student development. Welcome, Stacey. The floor is all yours.
Good day. Thank you for having me, Linda Kugle. So just to answer your question, I think one of the questions was just around what mental health is. And I think your second question was just around some of the issues that our students experience at UWC. And of course, Venetia touched on some of these things. So some of what I may say might sound like a repeat, but nonetheless, mental health basically includes our emotional, our psychological, and also our social well-being. So that basically means it impacts how we think about ourselves and the world, how we feel and how we behave. Our mental health also impacts our ability to cope with difficult situations and to respond to stress. And I think it's also just important for me to say that experiencing a range of different emotions like sadness, worry, anxiety, happiness, joy, and anger, these are all very normal emotions, and it's very, very normal for us to experience these emotions. I think the difficulty comes in when we experience these emotions in excess and when these emotions are persistent. So what I mean by that is when we experience these emotions more days than not. And when these emotions impact our ability to function optimally on a daily basis, and it impacts our ability to engage in activities that we would normally do or that we want to do. In the case of a student, an excess of anger, an excess of sadness or worry might impact his or her ability to effectively study. It might impact his or her ability to get up from bed and attend classes. And so when we experience these emotions in excess and they are persistent and it impacts our daily functioning, then one could likely sit with a mental health issue that needs further treatment and intervention. And to answer your second question around what are some of the prevalent issues we experience, or some of the issues that our students experience at UWC, and of course, without breaking the confidentiality of our students, they present with a wide range of emotional, physical, and psychosocial difficulties. So at the Center for Student Support Services and within therapeutic services, we attend to students that present with mood and anxiety disorders. So things like depression, bipolar, or anxiety that impacts the ability to study or impacts the ability to function in class or be in groups. A lot of our I mean, our students come from all over, some from Cape Town and some out of the country. And so this can often be difficult for students to adjust to university. It can often be difficult for students to adjust from being away from home and being away from the family. And so a lot of students also come with adjustment difficulties. We also see a lot of issues around relationships with families, friends, intimate partner relationships as well. Other things like loss and bereavement is also quite prevalent. And of course also academic difficulties and the pressures and the stresses that come with that, whether it be not managing studies or difficult relationships with lecturers or finances that impacts the ability to study, like not having the resources, etc. Thank you. I think I've answered your questions.
No, you've answered my questions perfectly. Thank you so much, Stacey. But before we let you go, we're going to try to get everything out of you as best as possible, because when do we have this opportunity again? I think you've mentioned something quite significant around the question of emotions, and the impact on how emotions can have an impact on our day-to-day ability to function. How do we sort of get around this issue? That because sometimes people think if I'm sad one day and then tomorrow I'm fine, that day that I'm sad, I think I'm depressed or I think I've got anxiety. But sometimes these things do happen to human beings. So I think it was important to draw a distinct line between a consistent, question. And I think the keyword that comes out from me is the question of functioning. So what are the sort of, issues that you guys are not prescribed, but sort of encourage people to do at CSSS that sort of help them, improve this sort of functioning, particularly speaking to academics and
Okay. I hope I didn't miss some of your question, Linda Kugle, but at the Center for Student Support Services, and specifically within therapeutic services, we are both psychologists and social workers, where we basically assess students first when they come in. And an assessment is really just to get to know the student better, to get a good history of the student and to understand what is happening to the student, because this will inform our treatment plan going forward, and it will also determine whether the student is seeking, the right treatment. Because sometimes students show up to CSSS, but they might be better suited for another service. So we do an assessment, and like I said, the assessment then informs the treatment plan. Essentially, we do work on a short-term based model. So, I mean, with the aim of restoring academic functioning. So that is very important to us. So we try and work with the student in such a way that the academic functioning is restored. And because every student presents with a different challenge, we cannot prescribe the same modality or the same treatment model to the student. But yeah, so the therapist and the student will work together in terms of what the goals are, what the student would like to achieve, and they will work towards those things. But if we're thinking in terms of practical things that students can do to cope, I think there are quite a lot of things. One of the things that we practice or we try to implement is mindfulness. It's grounding techniques, relaxation techniques, and this is techniques that almost just help the client to almost recenter themselves, and to just be within the moment and focus on the here and now. We also encourage things like exercise, because we know that physical health and mental health are related and connected. We also encourage social support, so whether it be from families, whether it be from the group of friends, or just other groups or support systems at campus. We also encourage, use of the SADC helpline. So there are various things. We encourage healthy eating as far as it is possible. We encourage, just taking time for oneself, whether and engaging in things that that the student enjoy, whether it is a student finding religion or spirituality important, then we encourage those things as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stacey, for that informative discussion and contribution to our Mental Health Day panel discussion. And I think along with the invaluable services that are provided by the Therapeutic Services Office within CSSS, there's a number of other departments in CSSS that offer services that can help students through particular processes. For instance, we've got the Office for Academic Support, which sort of increases learning functioning, learning styles, and helps, with the sort of guidance in terms of how best we can optimize our learning experience within the university and improve academic performances. And we also have the Office for Leadership and Social Responsibility, which is fundamentally based on a co-curricular leadership model that sort of increases the confidence of students, increases, creates sustainable networks, builds sustainable networks, and also increases the social responsibility element by using volunteer opportunities like the Rise Against Hunger Packing event and a number of other issues. So joining these offices can also help in terms of us getting plugged into the community. And finally, we've got the Office for Students with Disabilities, which specifically specializes in supporting and aiding academic functioning of students with disabilities on the university campus by making sure that the universal access principles are adhered to on the campus as an ongoing process of making sure that students living with disabilities are comfortable and also that their academic functioning is not impaired in any other way. So please do go onto the university website and go to CSSS, the portal of CSSS, and you'll find all these existing offices with many of their functions clearly spelled out there to help you as further resources beyond the therapeutic services. Thank you.
I had a black dog. His name was Depression. Whenever the black dog made an appearance, I felt empty and life just seemed to slow down. He could surprise me with a visit for no reason or occasion. The black dog made me look and feel older than my years. When the rest of the world seemed to be enjoying life, I could only see it through the black dog. Activities that usually brought me pleasure suddenly ceased to. He liked to ruin my appetite. He chewed up my memory and my ability to concentrate. Doing anything or going anywhere with the black dog required superhuman strength. At social occasions, he'd sniff out what confidence I had and chase it away. My biggest fear was being found out. I worried that people would judge me. Because of the shame and stigma of the black dog, I was constantly worried that I'd be found out. So I invested vast amounts of energy into covering him up. Keeping up an emotional lie is exhausting. Black dog could make me think and say negative things. He could make me irritable and difficult to be around. He would take my love and bury my intimacy. He loved nothing more than to wake me up with highly repetitive and negative thinking. He also liked to remind me how exhausted I was going to be the next day. Having a black dog in your life isn't so much about feeling a bit down, sad or blue. At its worst, it's about being devoid of feeling altogether. As I got older, the black dog got bigger and he started hanging around all the time. I'd chase him off with whatever I thought might send him running. But more often than not, he'd come out on top. Going down became easier than getting up again. So I became rather good at self-medication, which never really helped. Eventually, I felt totally isolated from everything and everyone. The black dog had finally succeeded in hijacking my life. When you lose all joy in life, you can begin to question what the point of it is. Thankfully, this was the time that I sought professional help. This was my first step towards recovery and a major turning point in my life. I learned that it doesn't matter who you are, the black dog affects millions and millions of people. It is an equal opportunity mongrel. I also learned that there was no silver bullet or magic pill. Medication can help some, and others might need a different approach altogether. I also learned that being emotionally genuine and authentic to those who are close to you can be an absolute game changer. Most importantly, I learned not to be afraid of the black dog, and I taught him a few new tricks of my own. The more tired and stressed you are, the louder he barks. So it's important to learn how to quiet your mind. It's been clinically proven that regular exercise can be as effective for treating mild to moderate depression as antidepressants. So go for a walk or a run and leave the mutt behind. Keep a mood journal. Getting your thoughts on paper can be cathartic and often insightful. Also keep track of the things that you have to be grateful for. The most important thing to remember is that no matter how bad it gets, if you take the right steps, talk to the right people, black dog days can and will pass. I wouldn't say that I'm grateful for the black dog, but he's been an incredible teacher. He forced me to reevaluate and simplify my life. I learnt that rather than running away from my problems, it's better to embrace them. The black dog may always be part of my life, but he'll never be the beast that he was. We have an understanding. I've learned through knowledge, patience, discipline and humour, the worst black dog can be made to heal. If you're in difficulty, never be afraid to ask for help. There is absolutely no shame in doing so. The only shame is missing out on life.
Before we get to the second session of the panel discussion, as it is split into two, I want to introduce another important panelist for the day. And I think this is a panelist that I've worked with closely in my days as a very irritating student representative in the SRC. And I hope that I didn't irritate her to the point that today she'll give me a couple of blows. But we want to introduce to you Dr. Faiza Khan from ResLife, who is a seasoned UWC ambassador and employee, and someone who has worked closely with a number of both student leaders, people living on res, and I think it's important to bring people who are directly involved in the day-to-day living of students at the University of the Western Cape. So Dr. Khan is the Living and Learning Coordinator at the University of the Western Cape under the ResLife, and she holds a PhD in social work at the University of the Western Cape as well, proudly so. And she's passionate about student development. Her actions speak for itself, and the creation of platforms to facilitate and enhance student engagement. Her research interests, amongst others, include the exploration of social justice issues within the higher education sector. And Dr. Khan is a registered social worker and has over 25 years of experience of offering counseling to persons across various sectors. She has also previously worked in the criminal justice sector, focusing on issues of community safety, school violence, gender-based violence, and social crime prevention. Dr. Khan has also worked in the academic sector and has been involved in the clinical supervision of social work students since 2003. So as you can hear, a versatile, dedicated, and sort of a very experienced person within our sectors at UWC. So, ladies and gentlemen, please allow Dr. Faiza Khan to come speak to us, particularly about things that are, important at the question of ResLife, not only ResLife, but just generally as well. Is that so? To speak to us about the practical ways in which they advise students to help cope with mental health, because they deal with students on a day-to-day basis, and how ordinary people like myself and yourself who do not have expertise can be able to assist and be supportive to people who are struggling with mental health issues. And finally, how we can improve awareness on mental health issues. Thank you, Dr. Khan. I hope that's not too much.
Thank you, Linda Cookling, for that warm welcome. And it's really nice to be here today. So as Linda Cookling said, I work in the Department of Residential Services in the division of ResLife specifically. And we provide services to resident students, both psychosocial services, academic support services, but at the same time, we also allow students, we provide opportunities where students can engage in co-curricular opportunities so that they can also develop their graduate attributes and also just, create a vibrancy at residence. So Linda Cookley's first question to me was, what are some of the practical ways that we can advise students to cope with mental health issues? And I was very glad to hear Stacey touching on some of those issues. So I'm just going to try and expand on what was already said here. So I think the first thing for me is to value yourself. And often as students, we don't value ourselves enough and we don't treat ourselves with the kindness and respect that we deserve. I think the world out there is full of criticism, and I think sometimes what we need to do is just avoid self-criticisms and make time for things that are important to us. So engage in hobbies, do our favorite projects, and just broaden our horizons, find opportunities to broaden your horizons. And I think students are fortunate at UWC because there are various opportunities that they can actually engage with in respect of developing the graduate attributes and participating in co-curricular projects. And then I think, as Stacey quite correctly said, the first point of call is obviously taking care of yourself and taking care of your body. And when you take care of yourself and your body, you're going to eat properly, you're going to eat healthy, or as healthy as your budget allows you, drink plenty of fluids and water, get enough exercise, because I think that also just helps you to feel a whole lot better and also helps you to deal with your stress. And I think also, our students live a very, very busy life, and they try and balance their academic life, their social life, their co-curricular activities. And I think it's also important amongst that to also just get enough sleep and take care of your body in that way. And then I think also just surround yourself with good people. I think it's important to have friends, to make connections with your family, and especially if you live in residence and you don't have the privilege of actually, seeing your family as regularly as other students do, just to make sure that you have these connections with your family, you have connections with people around you, people in your corridors, people in your blocks, people in your classroom, so that you can also just feel like you have a support network, because that I think is also quite important. And then I think it's important for students to also learn how to deal with stress. How do you deal with stress at the moment? I think there are some students that deal with stress in a way that's not good. So, for example, they consume too much alcohol, or they smoke weed, or they take other drugs. And what we are saying is that it's really important to identify what it is that you do when you deal with stress. So positive ways of dealing with stress is, for example, taking a walk, running, gymming, maybe journaling if that's what you want to do. So write down your thoughts and your feelings. And I think just also, engaging with other people when you're not feeling okay is also important. And then I think, Stacey spoke a little bit about mindfulness, and I think it's a very important technique. It's a very simple technique that we can teach ourselves. We can help to stay in the moment. We can help to understand how we feel. We can help to, to just get a sense of where we are at in the moment. And so things like mindfulness exercises, things like relaxation exercises, or if you are a meditation person or a yoga person, these are all things that can help you de-stress and help you to quiet your mind and to focus your mind and to allow yourself to be and live in the present. And then I think it's also important for you to have goals, wake up every day with a purpose. What are you going to do today? How are you going to balance your academic deadlines? How are you going to include people in your social spaces? And I think that's really important, because remember, I think, yes, you're coming to university to get a degree, but you also need to live your life. And I think what we need to help students do, what we try and help students do, is also just learn how to find that balance. How are you going to balance your social life, be your social person, but still meet your academic requirements? Because at the end of the day, you also want to complete your degree in the allotted time, but you also want to walk away knowing that you are fully engaged in the environment and in the opportunities that were presented to you. And then I think sometimes, we become a little, we become a little depressed when we do the same thing every day. So break the monotony, do different things, think about how you're going to use your social time more productively, try new things. So if you've never gone on a hike before, get a group of people together, go on a hike, try new things. Because I think that when you expose yourself to different things, you also tend to break the monotony of life and you broaden your horizons, because you're then able to explore new things. And then I think very, very importantly, we need to know when to get help, because I think sometimes we try a whole lot of different things, but there comes a point that we realize we can't manage this on our own and that we are not alone. And therefore, there are wonderful opportunities on campus. I mean, we've just heard the two previous speakers from SADC, from CSSS, from Days Life, myself. We are here to tell students that you are not alone. So seeking assistance is not a sign of weakness. In fact, it is a sign of strength, and it's important to remember that when you are not okay, that there are people who are there for you, there are people who are trained and who are able to provide you with the support, that you need. So then, quickly, the second question you asked me was, so how can we as normal people just support people who are suffering with mental health issues? And I think I want to say, I think we should learn to listen to people without making judgments, and allow us to focus and concentrate on their needs in that moment. Don't confront them, avoid confrontation with people, but just be there, reassure them, and give as much practical information as you can at that point in time. Allow them to share as much or as little as they want to. I think you need to be directed by where the person is at that point in time. Remember, your job as a friend or a fellow student is not to diagnose the people or the person that you're trying to support. It's not to second guess how they're feeling, because you're not a trained counselor, you're not a medical expert. So just be there, allow the person the space to talk and offer support. And then maybe you can offer your thoughts on what well-being is. You can talk about what you do to keep yourself healthy and to keep yourself well. And I think the most important thing is to listen carefully to what your friend or your fellow student is saying to you. And then offer them assistance in trying to get help. Because sometimes I think that first step is a scary step. When you know you need help, but you're not sure where to go, you don't know what resources are available. So offer your friend, I will go with you to CSSS. I will show you where, I'll show you what to do to be able to access help. Remember, you don't want to make decisions for people. Ultimately, the decision to get help should be theirs. But what you can do is you can be supportive and you can offer assistance should the person decide to go and take that first important step. And then I think for yourself as a friend or a fellow student, know your limits. I think you are not a counselor. You need to understand what your own boundaries are. And I think all you can do for the person is provide information, provide an empathetic ear, provide an opportunity for the person to be heard. But at the same time, you need to understand that if there are more at play and you are feeling anxious about what this person is going through, you need to know your limits and you need to help the person to seek the professional support that they need. So, you also asked me how I think we can improve awareness on mental health issues. And I think, there are lots of stigma around mental health. Lots of people are suffering alone, suffering in silence. And I think the important thing is that we need to help people to talk more openly about mental health. Let's keep that conversations going. Let's break the stigma. Let's make it okay to say that I'm not feeling okay today, or I need a mental health break because I'm not doing okay. And I think as a person, we need to learn more about the signs and symptoms of what mental health issues are so that we can share information, but we can share information that's accurate and that's informative. And then participate in local advocacy campaigns on campus to raise awareness about mental health. Know what the local resources are on campus and off campus so that you can refer people, to places where they can actually get help. And then use your own social media platforms, whether it's Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, to promote positive messages about mental health and to allow students to understand that they can break the silence, that they're not alone, and we can start to combat the stigma and allow people to understand that it's okay to get help. And I think what's really, really important is let's keep the conversations going, in our families, with our friends, so that we put mental health squarely on the agenda, where it should be, with information that's correct, with information that's accurate, and that supports people who want to go out and get support. Thank you, Linda Cookley.
Thank you so much, Dr. Khan. I think that was a comprehensive, contribution there. As a result, I don't think I'm going to ask you any more questions because I think you've covered most of the things, that are there. But I just want to make a passing comment in the question around knowing our limits as, ordinary people. And by ordinary people, I mean people who don't have a set of expertise, like you've mentioned, people like psychologists, social workers, or anyone who's in the field who understands it and has studied for it. So we have to know our limits. And I think the question around allowing people to share as much and as little as they want. And I think the latter part of the little, sometimes we feel that people are not sharing enough with us and that they should be sharing, and we don't realize that we're adding, added on pressure. And I think I've experienced that, and I've been guilty of that as well. And I think this is quite an informative part of your talk. Thank you so much, Dr. Khan, for that. And now we'll be moving on. Before we move on, we do want to encourage you again. Please bombard our panelists with questions if you have, as much as you can. We'll make it a point that the questions are answered as comprehensively as possible, because the point here is for us to spread the message of hope. It's for us to spread the message that there is something that each and every one of us can do to be able to improve the situation and help those who are suffering from mental health struggles, and to be able to ourselves monitor and evaluate how far we are in terms of our own struggles with mental health. And as we move from the first set of panelists, and now we move going closer and closer to people who are on the ground, closer and closer to people who are dealing day to day with students in particular, the principal stakeholder at any university. We're going now to the second part of the panel discussion. In the second part of the panel discussion, we will have two stakeholders, which are the Gender Equity Unit, known at the university for taking quite important and radical steps around questions of gender equity, their creativity in terms of the age of drama spaces, and many other things that have sort of brought conversation and kept conversation alive at the University of the Western Cape. So we will introduce the Gender Equity Unit first, and the representative of the Gender Equity Unit is Limpo Makapela. I know Limpo personally, and I think some of you who are joining us today might know Limpo personally as well. He's a very passionate person who has been around in sort of the student space, and now offers the expertise and sort of a drive in the form of the Gender Equity Office. And she facilitates and manages student-driven and departmental projects of the Gender Equity Unit, which I will term the GEU moving forward. And she's originally from Kimberley in the Northern Cape, from the Big Hole. Limpo's upbringing, due to her mother's work as a trade unionist, has exposed her to the realities and treatments of mine workers and sparked her interest in social issues, which led her to volunteer at the Gender Equity Unit during her time as an economics development student at the University of the Western Cape. Outside of figuring out the system, like many of us, and trying to make it better for everyone, especially the marginalized, Limpo finds leisure in taking long walks, something that has been encouraged by Dr. Khan, surrounded by nature and everything concerning creating, such as writing, art, and photography. And that's typical of anyone who's in that progressive space of the Gender Equity Unit. So Limpo, thank you very much for joining us. The questions that are, we want you to speak to us today and speak to in particular is that, I think you are going to be a very important discussant to our discussion today, because there's thriving, in very unfortunate terms, questions of gender-based violence in South Africa. And so what do you think is the impact of gender-based violence on mental health? And I ask this question not only because I think that the impact is only on those who are directly affected, but I'm talking about those who are impacted, it happens around, every woman. For instance, I struggle to get my sister to go jogging after 4 o'clock because she fears for her life. So what is the impact of gender-based violence on questions of mental health? And what are the effects of unequal gender relations on women's mental health? In the workspace, in the university sector, in leadership, and all of those things. And third and finally, what kind of support does the GEU provide or offer specifically to marginalized groups inside the university campus? Thank you so much. Limpo, you can take it away.
All right. Greetings, everyone. Okay, just to just to touch on that with regards to the reality of gender-based violence, violence against women, and violence against children have on mental health. Lindo Kuhle, you made an example with regards to how you tried to encourage your sister to basically, go around jogging, let's say around the block, and after 4 p.m., because usually that would be most people's best time to want to engage in physical activity. If not after 4, then probably a lot earlier than 8 or 9, depending on your schedule. And for a young woman, internalizing so much information about the reality of women in South Africa, your first thought is it safe? What are the chances are that something is going to happen to me? What are the chances that I'm going to be harassed verbally or physically upon this jog? What are the chances are that I'm going to be violently attacked along this jog, or even abducted, because we are dealing with the reality of human trafficking in South Africa? So those are the kind of questions that play around women's mind when navigating in any space, and it's quite frustrating to navigate in that way, because what happens is that it's kind of like you have a limitation of freedom of movement in your own country, in your own community, and it's only because of this kind of fear we have internalized for all our lives growing up, because that was how we were raised as young girls and young women, that these are the things you cannot do because of the reality that we live in. So we have to live in a particular way in order to prevent that happening to us. Instead of the conversation being shifted around to, tell men, tell young boys, it's not okay to violate somebody, So thank you for starting off with that particular example. So when we talk about, because I wanna talk about women and gender-based violence, and I'm going to start off with statistical information, which then feeds into the kind of reality that we find ourselves in with regards to our communities, with regards to our environment. And I just want you to take into consideration that every single institution, space, community is part of a bigger community. So just because, for example, the University of the Western Cape has this fence around it, doesn't mean that it's gated away from the realities that we are facing in our country. So when we look at the impacts of women and gender-based violence and mental health, I want us to also unpack the statistics of sexual assault in South Africa. So South Africa has one of the highest rates of gender-based violence in the world. 40% of South African women are raped in their lifetime, and only 8.6% of the perpetrators are jailed. The rate of sexual violence in South Africa is among the highest in the world, as I mentioned earlier on, and in 1998, 1 in 3 women questioned said that they had been raped. During 2015 and 2016, there were 51,895 crimes of a sexual nature reported to the South African police services. And in the year 2000, South Africa was ranked first for rapes per capita in the world. SAPS estimates that a woman is raped every 36 seconds, which a couple of years ago, that calculation was actually 40 seconds. And then a few years back, it was every minute. In 2009, the statistics concerning men in South Africa, in 2009, more than 25% of studied men in KwaZulu-Natal and the Eastern Cape admitted to raping someone. Nearly half said they had raped more than one person. And in 2010, 37.4% of studied men in the Gauteng area admitted to raping women. In 2014 and in 2015, a Western Cape study showed that 15% of men had raped a woman who was not their partner. Nearly 3/4 of men who admitted rape stated they had first forced a woman or girl into sex before the age of 20. Nearly 1 in 10 admitted to be doing so before the ages of 10. Now to focus on the statistics concerning children in South Africa. A 2007 survey found 60% of both girls and boys aged 10 to 19 years old thought it was okay to force sex upon someone they knew. Among 1,500 school children in Johannesburg, a quarter of all the boys interviewed said that gang rape was fun. More than half insisted that when a girl says no to sex, she really means yes. Men from the ages of 20 to 40 are more likely to have raped younger or older men. Facts on schools in South Africa. According to the Human Rights Watch, girls have been subjected to sexual violence at school in bathrooms, empty classrooms, dormitories, and more. Police, prosecutors, and social workers have also said many of the incidences that do occur in the schooling system aren't reported to them because schools often want to deal with it internally, which hinders the justice against the perpetrators. The danger of sexual violence in school has created a barrier for girls to seek education. And according to the Human Rights Watch, also reported that South African girls' school performance suffer after an incident of sexual violence. The current statistics in South Africa is that the reported sexual offences increased from 51,895 to 52,420 cases in 2018 and 2019. 41,583 of those cases were rape cases. That's an average of 114 rape cases are recorded by the police each day. In 2018-2019, a total of 2,771 women were murdered in South Africa. That's every 3 hours a woman is murdered in our country. A total of 1,014 children were murdered. Now, when it comes to the reality of one's mental well-being, women who experience mental health challenges as a result of gender-based violence are 3 times more likely to have suicidal thoughts or completed suicide. GBV refers to the psychological, physical, or sexual harm committed against an individual against their own will. Gender-based violence stems from societies or environments that promote women and gender inequity and where patriarchy is encouraged. Again, just remember that with regards to the rape culture narrative that I just shared. There are multitude of mental health conditions that may affect the abused, including the survivor, including depression, anxiety, post-traumatic distress disorder, and substance use disorder. These conditions significantly increase the risk of attempted or completed suicide amongst women. Studies have shown that psychological violence is as detrimental to mental health as other forms of violence, thus equally increasing the prediction of PTSD mental health disorders. Children exposed to violence and abuse are at risk of experiencing or perpetrating violence as an adult. So that again speaks to how the violence continues as a cycle within our communities as well. Researchers are recognizing the intergenerational cycle of violence and the linkages between trauma exposures in childhood and increased risk of psychological ill health and experiencing violence and perpetrating violence later on in life. So basically, everything that I've mentioned with regards to, especially with regards to the statistics and rape culture, they are all intersectional with each other. So rape culture is integrated in the societies and the communities that we come from. So therefore, we have to question on whether our communities, our societies are a breeding ground for sexual violence to take place. So there's a big concern for the cases that have not been reported. So that means that if we had to report all of the incidences around sexual violence, our statistics would look a lot higher than what we have right now. But now it brings us back to the question as to why people are not encouraged to, especially reflecting on the current statistics that we have, are encouraged to speak about sexual violences that is happening within the communities that we are coming from. And why it's very important for institutions, especially with regards to their policies, to take gender-based violence, violence against women, and violence against children into harsh consideration when it comes to the operations of the institutions. So like the university, for example, because the university is a community within a community. And as mentioned by our previous speakers, that there's a variety of students that come to this university. students from the Western Cape province itself, some from outside of the Western Cape province, and others outside of the country, right? So that means there's a diversity of people, a diversity of cultures, a diversity of value systems and beliefs that are entering our university space. Now, the thing is, or the assumption is that the people that are entering the space don't come with just their bodies and their minds and register in with their student numbers. They come in with the experiences as well. And people have experienced a lot of traumatic things in their childhood, and they bring that into the institution as well. And as I mentioned about how gender-based violence, violence against women, violence against children has an impact on one's mental well-being, you have to ask yourself with regards to the institutional culture, how is the space structured in a particular way that takes into the consideration the intersectional and holistic sense of the person entering the space? Those are the things that we need to often take into consideration, because what happens is, for example, let's say a student comes in who has been violated growing up as a child, comes into a space where the university is a community within a community. That doesn't mean that the university is isolated from the realities of the country. But all of that is happening in our country is happening in our institution, is happening in our work of our space of work as well. And that, and how one navigates after having been violated in the way that they have. Support is often given, yes, especially if, because not in all cases do these individuals take up the case and the case ends up in court. Some of it is not dealt in that manner. So the question is, what kind of psychological and emotional support are they receiving from the beginning towards the end? And what happens thereafter? The case has been, been processed and, let's say the perpetrator has been sentenced, right? The individual, the survivor's healing process is still ongoing. So it doesn't just end there. It's something that needs to continuously be put into place, that they have, because now this is something that they're going to be living with for the rest of their life. And they're going to have to navigate the rest of their life with this reality. So it's often also about the question about what kind of resources are put in place in order to support the survivor throughout. So hopefully this is making a lot of sense. So those are the kind of questions that we ask ourselves. And then when we look at spaces like the University of the Western Cape, is understanding that these individuals are navigating in the institutional space as well. And when I make reference to the examples of rape culture, these are the things that are going to trigger their lived experience from that particular moment. So how do we understand that, okay, this is the current culture that exists within our society at the moment? How do we try and change that in terms of our policies, in terms of our language, in terms of the conversations that we have around gender-based violence and violence against women and violence against children in our institutional spaces as well? And in these discussions that we have, how do we incorporate this into policy? How do we then make this a way of living, so that when we are navigating in our various spaces, that we take into consideration the realities that some of the people in the space that we are sharing have either gone through this lived experience? Another thing I want to make reference to, as you mentioned, Lindo Kuhle, at the beginning, is that gender-based violence, violence against women, violence against children, it doesn't just affect the victim and the perpetrator, it affects everybody. Being exposed to those kind of realities, indirectly especially, could develop a sense of fear for yourself, especially as a woman, especially a member of the LGBTI community, with regards to your safety. How do I know that the minute that I leave my place of living, that I would actually return back home? And that is the fear of just a person, as well as the fear of family, when they look at the young woman, the children navigating in our communities what are the chances are that they'll be returning home? The second aspect is also the intersectional factors that play into the reality around what enhances the breeding ground for gender-based violence and violence against women and violence against children. Intersectional realities, intersectional factors such as the socioeconomic structure of the South African landscape, which takes into consideration the class issue, which is the economic issue, takes into consideration race, gender identity, sexual orientation, sex, religion, culture. Those are the factors that we also have to continuously take into consideration, because they also emphasize on the marginalized being more exposed to these kinds of violences as well. So just to round up with regards to the power dynamics as well, is that we often find ourselves that we in spaces like this, in our societal spaces, we are basically geared, or we are raised in a particular way where we are expected to navigate submissively in all the spaces that we find ourselves in, and that we should navigate in fear. And for me, that is quite problematic. And even when we end up becoming victims of this reality, we are still blamed, even though we took into consideration all of these things that they told us to do. Don't walk at night. The other thing that one of the speakers mentioned, I'll just quickly mention that as well, because they spoke about COVID-19 and the reality around gender-based violence during this period, as was mentioned in media a lot before, is that there has been a spike with regards to the cases being reported. Now, when it comes to students, and especially our own students, the reality is that they're currently living right now with the perpetrators. So how do they navigate academically now that they are in the same space? They were stuck in the same space for so long with their perpetrators. So those are the kind of things that we often have to reflect on. And yeah, apologies for the time. Thank you. I'll stop right there.
No problem. Thank you so much, Limpo. That was quite a comprehensive discussion, and I think many of the things, I mean, the numbers don't lie, and they tell a horrible, horrible story, and a damning story for South African men in particular, and South African society in general. I think, thank you for shedding light on that, and I think it speaks volumes about the impact of you know, on the mental health of survivors in particular, and how they sort of navigate the space. I think I really do hope you guys are going to ask questions about this. I really do hope you guys are going to take heed, and I really do hope that you guys are, as you know, moved and shocked, and you know, not shocked that we don't know what the reality is, but every time we have to hear it, it sort of, I hope that it spikes something in us to sort of change our immediate surroundings and circles. Thank you very much, Limpo, for that comprehensive discussion.
Straight out the gate, the hate of the state makes very outright the fate of the great majority of the minority. Not a priority, and that bothers me. Fight for the country, help me, then dump me off to the side and try to bubble.
Whoa. Can I help you?
With John's mates. Is he around?
Yeah. He's over there.
Cheers, mate.
Right, John. All right, boys. Go sit down.
1 in 4 of us will fight mental health problems this year.
You can do this, John. We're with you.
We're with you, mate.
Having a mate in your corner.
And now we move on to our very own Deputy President of the Students' Representative Council, Dineo Mhlongo, who is passionate about student-related issues, and she recently completed a degree in BA Industrial Psychology. It makes her a very perfect candidate for today's talk, and she hopes to further studies and postgraduate studies in particular in industrial psych, as she is fascinated by how professions in the field are tasked with increasing employee productivity and mental health. By studying employees' attitude and behavior, industrial psychologists are able to identify areas of improvement and make necessary changes through new products, procedures, and leadership training. And a passion for mental health-related issues goes beyond just talking about it, in that she's also part of the Mental Health Steering Committee at the University of the Western Cape, which is a mental health project run by the Center for Student Support Services. So without any further ado, we'll ask the DP to speak to us, pointed questions in that. Again, I really want to ask this question again to the DP in terms of how do you think students, are there situations in terms of how ordinary people can help support other people? I asked this to Dr. Khan, but I think your context is different in that, do you think that students have sort of their own support groups, their own sort of coping mechanisms that exist amongst themselves, and how far the SRC know of these things? And also, how do you deal with the effects on you personally as a SRC? And I speak from experience of being an SRC member in the past, twice, unfortunately, in that, when you get people who come to you presenting all of these challenges and these are not only challenges of mental health, but they're challenges of life that sometimes make them fail, or sometimes make them struggle to perform academically, or sometimes make them struggle to register. That has an impact on you. And I want to ask, how has your collective dealt with that, in particular, those challenges? And what is your relationship with CSSS or any other, support structure on campus in terms of that? And finally, I think you guys are the beacon call for awareness in terms of student-related issues. How do you think we can improve awareness on questions of mental health issues? Thank you, DB.
Thank you, Lindo. Okay, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to answer question 1 and 3 together. And then, because question 2 is very, very important in terms of people need to understand that as an SRC, we don't only deal with student issues only, but we also have our own personal issues. And the fact that these problems that are being brought to us, it also adds on top of that. And also the mental wellness of SRC members are very, very important. Not only SRC members, but anyone that is in student leadership. So to answer your question 1, I'll say that it is very important for all of us to be informed and aware of mental health issues so that we can encourage an open and honest conversation about it, and also to break down any stigma or discrimination on the topic. We should lead by example by being open and honest and about the fact that mental health is everyone's responsibility, including the individual within the challenge. When you know that you have certain challenges, you need to reach out for support and follow through on the intervention plans to make sure that you are an active partner in your own health. As ordinary beings, we have a big responsibility to show empathy, kindness, and willingness to listen to others without judgment. And this is one of the most important things when you're an SRC member and a student comes to you. You need to be able to separate your own personal feelings towards the student, and also be aware that you as an individual, you cannot be judgmental to whatever it is that they bring to you. We also need to know where our personal boundaries are. And I think Dr. Khan also spoke about this. We also need to know where our personal boundaries are, and also recognize that when it is time to refer someone to a professional for assistance. There is a story about standing on a riverbank and seeing someone busy drowning on the river. You can't swim very well yourself. So the question then becomes, do you jump in to try and save the person, and in the process you both drown? Or do you ask for help, or get a rope and a couple of people to help you, and also stay on the riverbank to organize the help that the person might need? We will all contribute to the world where people can thrive if we show care and compassion, respect, and understanding for others. The question that you asked for in terms of how can we best tackle the issue of awareness, I'll say that awareness is an important part of educating people about mental health, their own as well as that of others. Awareness drives the need to be coordinated between student structures and support services to have a maximum effect and reach as many people as possible. Radio, social media on campus, and also events can be helpful. However, mental health education should be part of every aspect of education and any student life. So it needs to be integrated in everything that we do, from the classroom to the residences to the sports field, and also our social interaction. Now, to answer your question too, in terms of how do I personally or SRC members deal with the effects on students coming to and present their challenges, I think it's very, very important that there should be a relationship, in fact, between CSSS and also SDS in terms of giving support to student leaders. Because one thing that I was told by one of the wise men that used to unfortunately has left, but used to work at GWC, is that when you enter into SRC, number one, it is important that you know the kind of person that you are, and also you need to know your strengths and your weaknesses, because this is going to help you in understanding that there are certain cases that you yourself you won't be able to deal with, but you can give to your colleague. Now, one of the things that he said to me is that a lot of student leaders, they deal with the pressure that comes with the office. It's either if they casually drink, they become more drunkards, or they fall into the trap of being in depression or whatever. So luckily for us, when we came into office, because we've already been, not that we've been in office before, but we're already aware and been actively in student leadership, my office particularly made it a point that I make in contact with CSSS, so that whenever there's an SRC member that is in need of any help, because you need to remember that when students come to you, they don't only come to you with any education related issues. Some come to you with personal issues that you think that it's way beyond your own capabilities, and you need to find assistance for that particular person. And at some point, you need also a very strong support system. That's why it's very important that people understand this. It's important for student leaders to have a very strong support system, so that after the entire day of having to listen to student struggles and assisting and whatever, you have somewhere to lash up and get the steam out and have someone to assist. So for me personally, I deal with the issues that I myself am a goer of CSSS. So in our terms, Lindo, we say a goer. I make contact with Urani and I just lash out in everything that I'm going through at that point of time. And after that, I know that tomorrow I'm good for whatever it is that I need to face. So yeah, that's what I have to say. Oh, another thing that I wanted to say is that I found that with depression, it is one of the most important things you can what you need to realize is that you're not alone. I understand that the pain that a person can be facing is very hard, and you might seem as if you're the only one that is facing it, but you're not. I've seen people from the darkest moment of their lives living a happily fulfilling life. So can anyone else. The experience I've had is that once you start talking about what you're facing, you'll realize that you're actually part of a big club. Anything that is human is mentionable. Anything that is mentionable can be more mentionable. When we talk about our feelings, they become less overwhelming, less scary, and less upsetting. There is hope even when your brain cells tells you there isn't. The humanity we share is far more important than the mental health illness that we may not. Life doesn't make sense without the need for independence. And the sooner we learn that, the better. Mental health illnesses does not define who you are, but rather it is something that you experience as a person. So with this message, I would like to say to everyone that you are the one person in this world that above all things, that you should never give up on yourself. And if you are broken, you don't have to stay broken.
Thank you so much, DP, for that. I think you've, as a leader, you've led us in sort of the next segment, and I think it should be the final segment of our panel discussion, in that a message of hope. And I think the latter part of your message, which is very poignant and very important, is to say students are not alone, and you are an important person. And I think reiterating what Dr. Khan said about it's important to value and respect, give yourself the respect that you deserve. And I just want to ask the other panelists, just over a period of 60 seconds, we'll start with Dr. Khan, then come to Limpo and then Vanisha. And just to excuse Stacey, she had to leave us, and thank her for being with us. To ask all the other panelists to just give us a 60 seconds message of hope. If there were to be one or two things that you'd want to say to a student right now, or someone struggling with mental health issues, what would be your message of hope? Dr. Khan.
Hi, Linda Kukle, thank you. I think, just listening to everyone's stories here, to everyone's input here this morning, I think for me, I'd like to say to students that you are not alone, that if you do need help, reach out, get help, because you do not have to suffer in silence. And I really like what Dineo said, is that, if you find yourself in a space where you're not whole, you don't have to stay broken alone. We are here to help you. So get help, do something positive for yourself. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Khan. Thank you so much, Dineo, for starting us off so wonderfully. Limpo Makapela.
Basically, healing is it's a long process, and there's no one method that fits all. So you basically have to find something that works for you and keep working towards that. But then as you grow and as you change as a person, so would your methods as well. But the whole purpose is to not give up at all costs. You are worth fighting for.
Thank you so much, Limpo. Vanisha.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, perfect. I think my message for hope is definitely that if you're not feeling well, if you have a loved one or a fellow student that is not feeling well, if you're noticing that you're not eating well, you're not sleeping well, please reach out, even if it's to a friend, if it's to a counselor, if it's via the telephone or so via the helpline, please reach out and ask for help. There's always help available, and it's okay to not feel okay. It's okay to not be okay. It's okay to ask for help and reach out.
Thank you so much, Vanisha. And I think that ends our panel discussion in such a wonderful note, given Vanisha's last word. And I think it speaks to me personally and perhaps a lot of other people as well. It is okay to not be okay. And it's okay to accept that and try to improve that. Because sometimes I think we lose the battle trying to prove that we are fine instead of trying to get over the fact that, we're not fine and seeking the necessary help. I want to urge students and I want to reassure the panelists and reassure everyone that we will have gifts that will talk to you, give you all the information that you need. For instance, we've got a toll-free 24-hour helpline, which is 0800 222 333, it's free telephonic counseling offered by SEDEC to all University of the Western Cape registered students, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And they also offer referrals and help with all the issues that students are experiencing, as well as self-help tips and coping skills. They also have resources on the website, such as videos, articles to help you. And their website is www.sedec.org. With what you go onto the university page for Res Life, you'll get all the information that you need for Res Life and the Center for Student Support Services. All this information will be made available to you as we move forward as well. I want to send a hearty and warm thank you from the Center for Student Support Services to Dr. Faiza Khan, to Vanisha Gordon, to Dineo Nhlongo, Limpo Makapela, and to Stacey as well, our very own from CSSS, to say that thank you for your time, thank you for being here, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to be able to learn from you, but not only learn from you, learn more about ourselves, given the information that you've shared with us today. If there is anything that anyone has learned today, I hope is that they take some level of hope from the discussions that we've had today.
Living with a Black Dog, a guide for partners, carers and sufferers. What not to say or do. You may well be right when you say, it's all in your head, but don't say it. Leave that up to the professionals. Be a man. This certainly doesn't help, especially if they are one already. Depression is an illness, not a sign of weakness. Don't be an armchair general who gives unfounded advice and orders. Being thoughtful and kind will never go amiss, but don't try and jolly them along. It can often make them feel worse. Don't point out that there are people in this world far worse off than them. It just adds to their feelings of guilt and hopelessness. Good things to say and do. Be sensitive about how you approach the subject. A lot of people aren't used to talking about their mental health, or lack of it. Crossing that line simply means you care. Try not talking. Instead, grow your ears and open your heart. Really being there for someone without opinion or judgment is one of the best gifts you can ever give. Encourage them to seek a professional opinion and offer to help find a good doctor, make an appointment, and even going with them can be hugely beneficial. Encourage any form of regular exercise. Fitness robs the dog of its power. Help them develop a strategy to simplify their life, both at home and at work. Stress is one of the biggest drivers of depression. Less stress means less dog. Make them a ditch the dog box. Encourage them to fill it with favourite photographs, letters, or anything that reminds them of what's good in their life. Include a dog journal. Here they can plot how they're feeling, acknowledge progress, record the things they're grateful for, and set doable goals. Embracing the black dog. Agree to a course of action to get rid of the black dog. An ignored dog can become a big problem. Learn about the condition together. Knowledge is power, and validation is a great healer. A united front is crucial in getting the black dog to move on. As a caregiver, compassion, empathy, and understanding are vital, but recognise that you alone don't have the power to rescue your loved one. Professional help is often what's needed. Finding the right doctor can make all the difference to a healthy recovery. If they're going to tell someone their problems, it should be someone they respect and feel comfortable with. Don't be afraid to go for an initial assessment, and don't feel committed to continue if it doesn't feel right. If it's suggested you take antidepressants, do your research, know the facts, and ask your doctor plenty of questions. A big obstacle for seeking professional help is the cost. Help them realise that the cost of not getting the right help can be considerably higher. It can cost marriages, friendships, jobs, and even life itself. Some simple rules of engagement and agreement. Agree that there is a black dog in your midst and things may have to change temporarily. Agree that no one can help them until they fully commit to helping themselves. Agree to be gentle and respectful with one another during this time. Agree to check in with each other on a regular basis. Agree to communicate honestly and openly. Agree to the course of action set by their doctor and to review progress regularly. Self-preservation for the caregiver. It can be difficult not to take anger, criticism, negativity, and apathy personally. It's important not to buy into it. Accept that it's the depression barking, not the person you care for. Being overexposed to someone else's black dog can begin to rub off. Misery loves company, so try not to get sucked into the vortex. It's really important to recognise and honour your own needs, limitations, and boundaries. Difficult situations are better dealt with when you are calm and in the moment. Yoga, meditation, and mindfulness are great tools for achieving calmness and control. Join a support group. There's nothing like being in a room full of people who understand and share your story. It's important to get out and do your own thing and be with friends. Friends may not be able to solve your problems, but they can offer incredible support, comfort, wisdom, and laughter. A black dog in any relationship can be confronting, frightening, and frustrating. But navigated together, the bond can become deeper, richer, and better for it. And finally, the most important aspect of this journey is to constantly remind each other, it will pass, it will pass, it will pass. If you have a black dog in your life, get help, be helped, and always hold on to hope.
Ladies and gentlemen, we finally reached the end of our Mental Health Day event in the form of panel discussion, creative arts performances, and many other expressions that have given us messages of hope, not only for today, but for tomorrow, and as we continue to support those around us who might need mental health support, and also for ourselves to find support where we may need it. And now to do the closing. And before we do the closing, actually, I want to thank everyone for joining us today, particularly the panelists, for your insights, your valuable information, and your knowledge and experience that you've shared with us today, which has given us not only hope, but a greater deal of awareness than we had before we started this panel discussion. So I want to thank you, want to thank all the performances, and want to thank everyone who contributed in every small way to make this event possible. And for the final closing, as we say goodbye to you and leave you with a message of hope, we'd like to invite the leader of therapeutic services at the UWC campus in CSSS, Ms. Renee Gerber, to do the closing and thanks.
Thank you for watching this video, everyone. I just want to thank every person that worked tirelessly behind the scenes to make this happen. Every staff member, every student who participated to make this a reality. Thank you for all your hard work. And then for all our participants who shared of their knowledge, who shared of their experience, our poets, our singers, everyone who in some way contributed to this project, which really epitomizes what we've been saying all along, that mental health and well-being is everyone's business, it's everyone's concern, and we can work together to make this a better environment for everyone. So, guys, from my perspective, life is not an easy thing. For us who have lived a couple of years, like the grey hairs will show, there are good times and there are bad times. There are times in life when you feel like giving up. There are challenges, there are health challenges, there are mental health challenges, there are all sorts of things. And I've learned that life is not fair. So it is important that each and every one of you understand and realize your own worth. And when I say that you need to understand your own worth, it means that when you do know what you are worth, you will take responsibility first and foremost for your own well-being. It will matter enough for you to say, this is how I expect to be treated. This is how I will treat another human being. We will create a community of people at UWC where we can say, and not just at UWC, everywhere, in our families, in our country, in our world, where we can say, I take responsibility for my own health, yes, as far as I can. When I need help, I speak up and I seek that help. But I also am the kind of person that looks after others, that creates a space where there is trust, where there is non-judgment, where there is a place where a soft ear or a landing for people, but also where I can keep my own boundaries, where I know what I can and can't do, where I have respect for myself. And when we can live in that way, taking care of our mental health and our well-being will become part of our daily routine. It will become part of what we do as human beings. So I wish you well for the rest of the year and to get through this very unique year of 2020. And I hope that something today, somewhere, stuck with you, and that you will reach out to help. And it doesn't only have to be to a psychologist, whether it's to a friend, whether it's to a trusted person, whether it is to a priest or a spiritual leader, it doesn't matter. But we cannot live our life from birth to death as individuals that never ever connect with other people. We have to work together to make sense of this thing called life. So I wish you all the best, and I hope that you will find a way to value yourself enough to take care of your own mental health and well-being. Thank you for watching.
Thank you so much, Renee, for that heartfelt, warm thanks on your part, on behalf of CSSS and Therapeutic Services in particular. And now, if everyone else would please indulge us and join us in watching some of the local artists and performers who have agreed to add and sort of give more volume to our message of hope through creative expression. We'll have now a couple of those performances happening, and please do join us, sit back, relax, and enjoy their creativity.
up, guys? It's Janice here, and it's such an honor and a privilege to be able to connect with you guys online. Thank you so much to Lynn Abramser and UWC for allowing me just to be able to chat and just share a bit. I'm not going to speak a lot because I normally communicate all my thoughts and feelings through song, but I just wanted to say that during this whole month of mental wellness month, as we call it, I just wanted to let you guys know that you are never alone, whatever you're going through. And today, actually, while I'm busy doing this video, I'm sitting in my office on the floor just chilling, because that's normally what I do when I feel like, you know, things are getting too much, or, you know, anxiety is kicking in a bit. And I basically just sit and sing and just, you know, try to just find a really safe space, you know, in my thoughts and, you know, in my emotions. But the song that I'm gonna do for you guys, it's called Never Alone by Tori Kelly, and that's what it's all about. It's just reminding you guys that whatever you're going through, you are never, never, never alone. And whoever your higher power is, you know, for me, I'm a Christian, and so God is just such a focal point of, you know, my being, my soul, my mind, my heart. So when I feel a bit overwhelmed, that's exactly what I do. You know, like I said, go into a room and just sing. And so as you guys listen to the song, I hope that it just calms everything that you are going through and just helps with everything that you need help with. So thank you so much, and I hope that you enjoy it. Much love. Bye.
In the Matrix. I started off determined and bold and swore to conquer this pandemic psychological war it has launched on my sanity. First, it had me spend apart, locked in, packed out, stockpiled, and all cried out because I couldn't see the horizon through the network of weaved info all around me. Then I just started letting go. Letting go of time, space, trace, urgency, and calculations. I started sleeping light, dreaming hard, crying less, laughing more, and drained the boredom in pipe dreams, puffing peaceful ponders with no weight. Day became night, and night replaced day, days of recurring failure to find a track to reroute this derailed life that has adopted me. I started laying down, sitting up, turning left, looking right, and noticed the walls had fewer windows to see the birds, trees, bees. Ease the eyes and open up, please. But it seems COVID really did a number on me. And then I just rise to the occasion. I left the door open and allowed the chaos inside, for the orderly homeschooling by the Von Trapp clock approach fell flat when depression took a blind swing at my spirit that first week. I was going to do this. I was going to be the hero and show my children's teachers how amazing I will triumph with well-rehearsed resources. But I frantically caved, knowing the unknown of 2020. I left the door open and allowed the chaos inside, acknowledging controlled chaos I later found forming its own ritual and system. Individuals scattering throughout the day with only one meal at dusk and prayer, knotting the loose ends together and weaving a beautiful macrame of blood relation. I left the door open and allowed the chaos inside because the story PC games needed reading that forced hangmen on their smartphone screens in order to exercise grade 5 mentality. Nudged them into grand fantasy play that stayed erect over my youngest bed, now functioning as a space to find solitude and peace within. A camp tent, an address to visit him and him visiting us when he can again deal with our world. I left the door open and allowed the chaos inside that quickly transformed into skillful Google search and the detailed YouTube videos of how to grow veggies indoors. So proud little green fingers that types, dunks, press and color find new and exciting ways to make fingers more useful. I left the door open and allowed the chaos inside to belch out in crazy karaoke sessions, uneasy on the neighbors' ears, and parodies to broadcast personal dismay and poetry preaching silenced, pondering thoughts of unshackled incarceration. I left the door open and allowed the chaos to wrestle my belief that I can follow cooking instructions and read recipes that cooks the way the photos portrayed on the net and tastes even better, like mina soup, bolas, pizza, puris, and frittatas, boasting on plates, evolving me into a culinary goddess. I left the door open and allowed the chaos inside, thinking old work may be piled and polished until a pleasant call of an old pal offered me a paid gig with coins cling in the bank that has been starved for 2 weeks before lockdown. I left the door open and allowed the chaos inside, cause chaos is what I know and what we are used to. The messy schedules I usually needed to prioritize and restructure every week. The children living separate but parallel lives day by day, week by week, month to month. The on and off days where things are in full control and other times we just fail hopelessly. That was our normal, and that's the normal the virus had no claims on. Controlled chaos, tailor-made for my family's harmony, mentality, and solidarity. Because when I left the door open and allowed the chaos inside, we became content.
Inperking. Ek voel baie emosies teenoor die virus en dis 'n wipplank van gevoelens. My natuurlike neiging om depressief en angstig te wees teenoor die onbekende maal in my wese en ek snak na asem gereeld. Ek haal diep asem. Sag. En probeer die kriewel van gedagtes wat my klein tongetjie prikkel oor my tong te hoes. Dit klou, want dit is besmet met opinies, inligting en voorsê. Ek het verdwyn. Onsigbaar geraak. Want ek weet nie wat ek dink, voel of eerlik gesproke hoe om te spoel my wêreld in my kieste soos voorheen nie. En dan ek voed my vlees, knie my siel, sis my gees, en wieg my geestestoestand, totdat ek weer vrylik kan uitasem. En nou? Nou trek ek my asem op, en ek wag.
Guys, my name is Vusumuzi Mpofu. I'm a poet and this is my contribution for the World Mental Health Day event. The first poem that I'm going to be sharing is titled Feel Good Inside. So you guys should really take care of your mental health, take care of your spaces. Enjoy. So the poem goes, I have become tired of writing sad poems. I have grown tired of reciting somber poetry. In all honesty, it does not make me feel good inside. Besides, I am starting to feel like I have been rewriting and reciting the same poems since I was 16. I do not like being another black poet with the absent father poem. This does not make me feel good inside. Besides, I am starting to feel I'm starting to feel like I'm stripping naked on stage. I'm feeling like I'm undressing in front of audiences with words from a page. This does not make me feel good inside. I have been unlearning what it means to be a poet. WTF does it mean to be a poet? Do you know it? I have been unlearning how to be a poet. I do not know it. What I do know is that there have been days when I did not feel like a poet should feel. Days when I felt like I was the somber poem. Days when I needed to heal. There have been days when I found the healing. I found my healing in the rhythms and poems that I write and I recite. And this makes me feel good inside. The next poem that I'm going to be reciting is titled Love in the Time of COVID-19. I remember a time when we could go outside without having to wear a face mask. That time seems to be very distant in the past. It was a time before COVID-19 struck. Life and love were significantly different back then compared to how they are today. We have been experiencing chaos. We have been experiencing chaos in every way. Ever since the corona beast broke loose, going on a rampage across the globe, the foundations of earth have been shaken and we had to grip the steadfast pillar of hope. Times have been tough. Everything else has been the toughest except for our love. Our love has always been tougher than the roughest times. We are learning how to remain close to each other while maintaining a safe social distance. The distance has not stopped us from loving each other. A poet once said, the distance, it only makes the heart grow fonder. They can never put a curfew for when I love you. Love in the time of COVID-19 is nothing short of a miracle. Like a beautiful garden that is growing and has lilies in it. I will forever love the fighting human spirit. True love is blossoming inside our hearts and sprouting through our chests in the time of COVID-19. Humanity has become something like a beautiful botanical garden. However, it is not all daisies and roses. There are a few weeds amongst us. George Floyd could not breathe when he was not even wearing a face mask. During lockdown, the victims of lockdown have been locked in. Schools have been closed. Jobs have been lost. Social relief funds have been looted. There are weeds amongst us that must be uprooted and burned so that the flowers may grow, bloom, and pollinate. The World Health Organization says that COVID-19 is going to be part of our lives for a long time to come. This means that we have got to keep on loving each other for a long time to come. They say that things will never go back to normal as they used to be before. This means that we have to start loving each other like never before, because when all else fails, the only vaccine that we have is love. Thank you very much. Enjoy your World Health Mental for your Health Day and take care of yourselves. Love and peace.
Wakazole tu kwigumbi lengcinga. Kugcwale ubugoxo bamathambo wembophelelo zabamwekha abafela kuyo le ntlambo. Andazi nokuba luxinzelelo lwengqondo okanye sisingqala sabo basishiyayo. Esi sindidiza umphefumlo sindixina ingqondo kube nzima ukucinga. Andilili ngakuthanda. Ndincancazeliswa sisingqala esindenza ndiziqaphule iminqantsa eqenqeleka ingqaqambo kulamaqhwa aqulathwe ngumzimba. Ncinga zam zindophula ukhakhayi ndakuzivalela ngaphakathi. Ndizibona sele ndiziphimisela nokuba sele ndihamba ndedwa. Kuba lento itya mna ndedwa sanukundihleka. Andizenzanga. Ndenziwa kukuphuphumala kwengcinga. Ndikhonjwa entanjeni lulwambila lokufa olundibulalela amathemba okuphila. Ndibambele nokuba yintakana encinana undixhelele phantsi kwesicamagushelo. sokutyekeza lento ingaphakathi kum ndibona indimndedwa otshonela enzulwini njengoko nina nisenyukela ndenyuseni nam ndifane nani ndicela ukuhlanguleka hayi ukuhlekwa ndibolekeni isifuba senu ndibeke intloko yam ndifumane ukucambalala akukho kuphumla kwesam isifuba yingxoxo-mpikiswano esishiya singcwalekile kukonzakala ndiphefumla ngenxeba kule nzakala ndijinga ngesebe lokholo kwigolide yomgca wamafu ndileqa ukukhanya ekupheleni kwetonela ndinethemba lokufika ndisaphila kwelam ikamva ndinethemba lokuba ezi ntlungu ziyakuthothomala uxinzelelo luyakunyamalala ndinethemba lokuba lo mgibe wengcinezelo zengcinga ndakuhlanguleka kuwo kulo mgodi wokufa ndiyakwenyukela ndinethemba okwam ukuphila kuya kunyanga abaninzi uthi nalo mbongo ufundise isininzi ukuba siyeke ukwenyanya uxinzelelo lwengqondo silangazelele ukunyanga nokuxhasa abo baqobisana nalo ndibhala ngenjongo zokukhulula abo babopheleleke kwintilongo yengqondo ozisele zibunjwe inzondo omanxeba engalo abalisa intlungu yokurhaxwa kukufa sinda mntasekhaya noxa ubomi bukungcwaba uphila umbilini wakho uyaphila ungxola isikhalo seqhawe lomkhosi elingagotywa phondo ngokucinezelwa kweli dabi awukho wedwa bamba isandla sam senyukele kule ntaba ngaphaya kwayo sakuzuza ukuphumla ukuphila luhambo ayiyoyindawo ludinga umonde ludinga ukunyamezela ludinga ukunyamekelwa kambe ichiza likwalapha kuwe uyakuthi ulufumane ngokuzondelelela ukuphila langazelela ukumamela lamazwi antyiloza kuwe ezindlebeni zinza zakuqatsela ingqaqambo zola zakungqubana ingcinga phefumla ukhuphe umoya nembophelelo zoxinzelelo libala umzuzwana ukuze ingqondo imile nawe uzinze khumbula ukuphila ayiyo ndawo luhambo ngoko ke yazi ukuba siphila sam.
I dare you to walk in my skin for one day. Your light will succumb to dark. Involuntary you'll be shook and envision sanity from an invisible straitjacket held in skin. You would dare to scream and be coined irate, intolerable, undigestible, a poison to the status quo. You will hush yourself in melancholy, rock in silence, and be questioned, interrogated, until you no longer wish to speak. You'll be shy to live, every whim and thought an analogy, a weapon to mass incarceration by word, not heard. Psychosis spans withdrawals of a time you used to exist. Memory fades fast, you are unpalatable. So you swallow yourself whole, ingest what they cannot stand. You become small, scared. You become a tired limb. You forget gravitating between present and future. You forget words like nurture. You forget levitating between doubt and birthright. You forget royalty. You become deceased, and they win. You, the previous blossom sunshine, you cease, crease, and they wonder how it went wrong. Which trauma, which family member, which friend, which micro-finite invisible aggression made you cease breath, took levitating from you as birthright, cocooned you to shame, to nothingness, to untraceable footprint of would-be lung. But dear friend, remember, when your spirit is on the line, you can serenade yourself in past and future. Hum the lullaby to ease the chaos. Tiptoe around the shards of glass and see the mirror whole. Breathe a life imagined, unshackled from the norm. Seed a new harvest. Echo ways unfulfilled. Take up space, darling. You are a catalyst, no mule. You are a voice in a time of noise. You are seen. You are felt. You are space. You are a teacher from the heart, a smiling of the eyes, a play through word, a dream on palms. You are a shaping and a molding and a making and a rising. You are a gold-clad soul, a healer through word to action. You can turn courage to magic again. So when your spirit is on the line, gather the shards of glass and see the mirror whole.
In my time I've traveled some roads, a rolling stone, nowhere feels like home. And I've seen people come and they go. Life is just a story of some highs and some lows. Tell me, do you believe in miracles? I'm standing here before your eyes. I've cried many rivers, I've walked through some pain. I've seen my world crumble, and I've carried the shame. But I know somebody, he calls me his own. I can hear heaven singing out, oh, you're never alone. Oh, you're never alone. Everybody wants to be king. We put all our hope inside material things. In my life I now understand that everything I have and everything that I am. Sometimes I feel like I'm not good enough, but that's when love says you're mine. I've cried many rivers, I've walked through some pain. I've seen the world crumble, and I've carried the shame. But I know somebody, he calls me his own. I can hear heaven singing out, oh, you're never alone. Oh, you're never alone. No. I may have took some time, but now I realize my imperfections were a part of your plan. If all good things work together in the end, the broken world be beautiful. I've cried many rivers, I've walked through some pain. I've seen my world crumble, and I've carried the shame. But I know somebody, he calls me his own. I can hear heaven
right. Greetings, everyone. Yeah. Okay, just to just to touch on that with regards to the reality of gender-based violence, violence against women, and violence against children have on mental health. Linda Kuhle, you made an example with regards to how you tried to encourage your sister to basically, go around jogging, let's say around the block, and after 4 p.m., because usually that would be most people's best time to want to engage in physical activity. If not after 4, then probably a lot earlier than 8 or 9, depending on your schedule. And for a young woman, internalizing so much information about the reality of women in South Africa, your first thought is it safe? What are the chances are that something is going to happen to me? What are the chances that I am going to be harassed verbally or physically upon this jog? What are the chances are that I'm going to be violently attacked along this jog, or even abducted, because we are dealing with the reality of human trafficking in South Africa? So those are the kind of questions that play around women's mind when navigating in any space, and it's quite frustrating to navigate in that way, because what happens is that it's kind of like you have a limitation of freedom of movement in your own country, in your own community, and it's only because of this kind of fear we have internalized for all our lives growing up, because that was how we were raised as young girls and young women, that these are the things you cannot do because of the reality that we live in. So we have to live in a particular way in order to prevent that happening to us. Instead of the conversation being shifted around to, tell men, tell young boys, it's not okay to violate somebody, So, so thank you for starting off with that particular example. So when we talk about, because I wanna talk about women and gender-based violence, and I'm going to start off with statistical information, which then feeds into the kind of reality that we find ourselves in with regards to our communities, with regards to our environment. And I just want you to take into consideration that every single institution, space, community is part of a bigger community. So just because, for example, the University of the Western Cape has this fence around it, doesn't mean that it's gated away from the realities that we are facing in our country. So when we look at the impacts of women and gender-based violence and mental health, I want us to also unpack the statistics of sexual assault in South Africa. So South Africa has one of the highest rates of gender-based violence in the world. 40% of South African women are raped in their lifetime, and only 8.6% of the perpetrators are jailed. The rate of sexual violence in South Africa is among the highest in the world, as I mentioned earlier on, and in 1998, 1 in 3 women questioned said that they had been raped. During 2015 and 2016, there were 51,895 crimes of a sexual nature reported to the South African police services. And in the year 2000, South Africa was ranked first for rapes per capita in the world. SAPS estimates that a woman is raped every 36 seconds, which a couple of years ago, that calculation was actually 40 seconds. And then a few years back, it was every minute. In 2009, the statistics concerning men in South Africa, in 2009, more than 25% of studied men in KwaZulu-Natal and the Eastern Cape admitted to raping someone. Nearly half said they had raped more than one person. And in 2010, 37.4% of studied men in the Gauteng area admitted to raping women. In 2014 and in 2015, a Western Cape study showed that 15% of men had raped a woman who was not their partner. Nearly 3/4 of men who admitted rape stated they had first forced a woman or girl into sex before the age of 20. Nearly 1 in 10 admitted to be doing so before the ages of 10. Now to focus on the statistics concerning children in South Africa. A 2007 survey found 60% of both girls and boys aged 10 to 19 years old thought it was okay to force sex upon someone they knew. Among 1,500 school children in Johannesburg, a quarter of all the boys interviewed said that gang rape was fun. More than half insisted that when a girl says no to sex, she really means yes. Men from the ages of 20 to 40 are more likely to have raped younger or older men. Facts on schools in South Africa. According to the Human Rights Watch, girls have been subjected to sexual violence at school in bathrooms, empty classrooms, dormitories, and more. Police, prosecutors, and social workers have also said many of the incidences that do occur in the schooling system aren't reported to them because schools often want to deal with it internally, which hinders the justice against the perpetrators. The danger of sexual violence in school has created a barrier for girls to seek education. And according to the Human Rights Watch, also reported that South African girls' school performance suffer after an incident of sexual violence. The current statistics in South Africa is that the reported sexual offenses increased from 51,895 to 52,420 cases in 2018 and 2019. 41,583 of those cases were rape cases. That's an average of 114 rape cases are recorded by the police each day. In 2018-2019, a total of 2,771 women were murdered in South Africa. That's every 3 hours a woman is murdered in our country. A total of 1,014 children were murdered. Now, looking at the statistics, I want to touch on the rape culture that is often brought about when speaking about GBV, violence against women, and violence against children. So rape culture is considered where sexual violence is treated as the norm. So people are often or have projected a sense of desensitization towards the conversations around sexual violence, especially within our institutions or in organizations or in our communities. Rape culture breeds a culture of victim blaming. So when there are cases of rape being reported, the focus is on what did the victim do? Where was she at night? Was she drunk? What was she wearing, right? And it's not about sexual violence itself, but it's also about rape culture also constitutes in cultural norms and institutions that protect the rapists, promote impunity, shame victims, and demand that women make unreasonable sacrifices to avoid sexual assault. Again, bringing back to what I said at the beginning, a lot of the considerations that we need to take about when navigating in our own communities. It also serves as a silencing function for those who share their narrative. And the other thing about rape culture is that there's always this focus on teaching young girls, young children, how not to get raped instead of teaching not to rape. And as I mentioned before, 1 in 4 rapes are reported in South Africa. 76% of police stations in South Africa do not have adult rape kits in stock, and 69% of the stations do not have child rape kits in stock, which speaks about the priority around the navigation and the resources that needs to be put in to dealing with the reality of sexual violence, of gender-based violence, of violence against women, of violence against children in our country. Examples of rape culture include, but are not limited to, blaming the victim, trivializing sexual assault, saying boys will be boys, sexually explicit jokes, tolerance of sexual harassment, inflating false report statistics, instead of focusing on the reported statistics, but also allow us to ask the question, what about the cases that are not being reported? Publicly scrutinizing victims' dress, as I mentioned, mental state, motives, and history. The presentation around our media streams around violence in movies and in televisions, defining manhood as dominant and sexually aggressive, defining womanhood as submissive and sexually passive, pressure on men to score, pressure on women to not appear as cold, assuming only promiscuous people get raped, assuming that men don't get raped or that only weak men get raped. Now, when it comes to the reality of one's mental well-being, women who experience mental health challenges as a result of gender-based violence are 3 times more likely to have suicidal thoughts or completed suicide. GBV refers to the psychological, physical, or sexual harm committed against an individual against their own will. Gender-based violence stems from societies or environments that promote women and gender inequity and where patriarchy is encouraged. Again, just remember that with regards to the rape culture narrative that I just shared. There are a multitude of mental health conditions that may affect the abused, including the survivor, including depression, anxiety, post-traumatic distress disorder, and substance use disorder. These conditions significantly increase the risk of attempted or completed suicide amongst women. Studies have shown that psychological violence is as detrimental to mental health as other forms of violence, thus equally increasing the prediction of PTSD mental health disorders. Children exposed to violence and abuse are at risk of experiencing or perpetrating violence as an adult. So that again speaks to how the violence continues as a cycle within our communities as well. Researchers are recognizing the intergenerational cycle of violence and the linkages between trauma exposures in childhood and increased risk of psychological ill health and experiencing violence and perpetrating violence later on in life. So basically, everything that I've mentioned with regards to, especially with regards to the statistics and rape culture, they are all intersectional with each other. So rape culture is integrated in the societies and the communities that we come from. So therefore, we have to question on whether our communities, our societies are a breeding ground for sexual violence to take place. So there's a big concern for the cases that have not been reported. So that means that if we had to report all of the incidences around sexual violence, our statistics would look a lot higher than what we have right now. But now it brings us back to the question as to why people are not encouraged to, especially reflecting on the current statistics that we have, are encouraged to speak about sexual violences that is happening within the communities that we are coming from. And why it's very important for institutions, especially with regards to their policies, to take gender-based violence, violence against women, and violence against children into harsh consideration when it comes to the operations of the institutions. So like the university, for example, because the university is a community within a community. And as mentioned by our previous speakers, that there's a variety of students that come to this university. Students from the Western Cape province itself, some from outside of the Western Cape province, and others outside of the country, right? So that means there's a diversity of people, a diversity of cultures, a diversity of value systems and beliefs that are entering our university space. Now, the thing is, or the assumption is that the people that are entering the space don't come with just their bodies and their minds and register in with their student numbers. They come in with the experiences as well. And people have experienced a lot of traumatic things in their childhood, and they bring that into the institution as well. And as I mentioned about how gender-based violence, violence against women, violence against children has an impact on one's mental well-being, you have to ask yourself with regards to the institutional culture. How is the space structured in a particular way that takes into the consideration the intersectional and holistic sense of the person entering the space? Those are the things that we need to often take into consideration, because what happens is, for example, let's say a student comes in who has been violated growing up as a child, comes into a space where the university is a community within a community. That doesn't mean that the university is isolated from the realities of the country. But all of that is happening in our country is happening in our institution, is happening in our work of our space of work as well. And that and how one navigates after having been violated in the way that they have. Support is often given, yes, especially if, because not in all cases do these individuals take up the case and the case ends up in court. Some of it is not dealt in that manner. So the question is, what kind of psychological and emotional support are they receiving from the beginning towards the end? And what happens thereafter? the case has been, been processed and, let's say the perpetrator has been sentenced, right? The survivor's healing process is still ongoing. So it doesn't just end there. It's something that needs to continuously be put into place, that they have, because now this is something that they're going to be living with for the rest of their life. And they're going to have to navigate the rest of their life with this reality. So it's often also about the question about what kind of resources are put in place in order to support the survivor throughout. So hopefully this is making a lot of sense. So those are the kind of questions that we ask ourselves. And then when we look at spaces like the University of the Western Cape, is understanding that these individuals are navigating in the institutional space as well. And when I make reference to the examples of rape culture, these are the things that are going to trigger their lived experience from that particular moment. So how do we understand that, okay, this is the current culture that exists within our society at the moment? How do we try and change that in terms of our policies, in terms of our language, in terms of the conversations that we have around gender-based violence and violence against women and violence against children in our institutional spaces as well? And in these discussions that we have, how do we incorporate this into policy? How do we then make this a way of living so that when we are navigating in our various spaces, that we take into consideration the realities that some of the people in the space that we are sharing have either gone through this lived experience? Another thing I want to make reference to, as you mentioned, Lindo Kuhle, at the beginning, is that gender-based violence, violence against women, violence against children, it doesn't just affect the victim and the perpetrator, it affects everybody. Being exposed to those kind of realities, indirectly especially, could develop a sense of fear for yourself, especially as a woman, especially a member of the LGBTI community, with regards to your safety. How do I know that the minute that I leave my place of living, that I would actually return back home? And that is the fear of just a person, as well as the fear of family when they look at the young woman, the children navigating in our communities. What are the chances are that they'll be returning home? The second aspect is also the intersectional factors that play into the reality around what enhances the breeding ground for gender-based violence and violence against women, violence against children. Intersectional realities, intersectional factors such as the socioeconomic structure of the South African landscape, which takes into consideration the class issue, which is the economic issue, takes into consideration race, gender identity, sexual orientation, sex, religion, culture. Those are the factors that we also have to continuously take into consideration, because they also emphasize on the marginalized being more exposed to these kinds of violences as well. The other thing that I would want to mention is that with regards to rape culture, there was something that was shared on social media which spoke about and this again touches to the power dynamic that you asked in one of your questions, is what would you do if there were no men for 24 hours? What would you do as a woman? And the responses to that question was that they would actually engage in walks late at night, wearing whatever it is that they want to wear without having to second guess it. They would actually just, take a nice long walk without having to weaponize themselves. They would actually go to parks and have night camps with their friends without having to think that something is going to happen to them. Some said they would just go to the park, have a picnic on their own, sit down and read a book. So that kind of dynamic speaks to the realities that women face in today's society, is that our freedom of movement is restricted because of the violations that we could experience in our own communities as well. The other
sorry to disturb you, Limpo. Can we just have one more minute so that we can have enough time for the next speaker? Thank you very much.
Oh, no problem. All right. So just to round up with regards to the power dynamics as well, is that we often find ourselves that we in spaces like this, in our societal spaces, we are basically geared, or we are raised in a particular way where we are expected to navigate submissively in all the spaces that we find ourselves in, and that we should navigate in fear. And for me, that is quite problematic. And even when we end up becoming victims of this reality, we are still blamed, even though we took into consideration all of these things that they told us to do. Don't walk at night. The other thing that one of the speakers mentioned, I'll just quickly mention that as well, because they spoke about COVID-19 and the reality around gender-based violence during this period, as was mentioned in media a lot before, is that there has been a spike with regards to the cases being reported. Now, when it comes to students, and especially our own students, the reality is that they're currently living right now with the perpetrators. So how do they navigate academically now that they are in the same space? They were stuck in the same space for so long with their perpetrators. So those are the kind of things that we often have to reflect on. And yeah, apologies for the time. Thank you.